Hi, this is Emily, and today I'm at Gallipoli Barracks at the 2nd General Health Battalion. This is the Army's deployable field hospital, and I'm with 3 current serving members, each of whom works in the health space within the ADF. They'll be with me for the next 40 minutes or so to answer all your health-related questions, so please make sure you send your questions through. Now let's start with some introductions. Can you please let us know your name, your job role and time served in the ADF?
Danielle Bell. I'm a psychologist and I've been in for 14 years.
My name is Marcus Robertson. I am an Army intensive care nurse and I've been serving for 23 years.
Christine James. I'm a registered nurse specialist in peri-op emergency and trauma, and I've served approximately 20 years.
Fantastic. So you all work either as a nurse or a psychologist for the services. Now, those are priority job roles at the moment, but by no means are they the only job roles available within health. While we don't have a representative for all roles, please feel free to send your questions through and we will do our best to answer them as we go through the Q&A. Now, Marcus, you're actually based here at Enoggera, and this is the unit that you're posted to. So can you tell us a little bit about your unit here?
Yeah, so as you said before, this is the 2nd General Health Battalion. What we are is Army's only field deployable hospital. What that means is that we are registered with the College of Surgeons to provide damage control surgery and minor operations when required. Now, what you can see behind us at the moment is an example of the intensive care unit. And these facilities tend to work with, we have quite a large range of allied health professionals that work within it. So it's very similar to a civilian hospital, but just in a deployed area.
Wonderful. Now, what sparked your interest in your chosen field?
Well, after finishing my 4th year honours in psychology, I was looking for a job and looking on seek.com, and an Army job came up and I thought, wow, it looks really interesting. The aspects that I liked was being able to maintain your fitness, the medical and dental aspects, and also the variety of jobs that are available as a psychologist, but also moving around the country and seeing different parts of Australia as part of your job as well, and opportunities to deploy overseas.
Yeah, so I'd always had an interest from the time that I was young in health sciences, and I eventually made the decision to go and study nursing, and I'd had an 8-year history of being in the military prior to that, and so what I found was this was a really good opportunity to combine what I loved about being in the military and also my love for the health sciences.
So I grew up surrounded by military people, so I always knew that I wanted to join the military. I just wasn't sure what avenue I wanted to pursue, and I was lucky enough to do work experience placement when I was 16, and for me that cemented that I wanted to go into the healthcare role and look after the people that protect my freedom.
Fantastic. So can you tell us a little bit about the avenue of entry for your respective services and your own path to your current role?
For me, I came through a direct entry officer where I completed the initial training at RMC and then went on to do specific training within my role as a psychologist, and then from there on went and done an internship under supervision with a registered psychologist over a 2-year period to then become a registered psychologist.
Yeah, so in order to become an Army nurse, there's 2 avenues in which you can come in. One of them is as a direct entry officer, which means you already have qualifications and experience as a nurse, so minimum is 2 years experience. And then there's another avenue which you can come through as an undergraduate, which means that you have commenced study and that you are then selected to be sponsored through your studies and then go out and get some experience and then come in, and that's the avenue which I used.
So with the Navy we have just direct entry, but we take nurses into both our full-time Navy and our reserves. Direct entry requires both, is required for both, so they need to be graduates with experience, and that's the avenue I followed. So I had been a sailor in a previous life as a medic, and I left the service, went back, completed my university training and postgraduate specialist training, and then I applied to come back in as a direct entry nurse.
Yeah, fantastic. So we have got some questions, so we can jump straight into them. Now, Tracy has asked, how competitive is the DUS for nurses?
Extremely competitive.
Yep.
Obviously what we're looking for, it's a combination of things. So academic performance is incredibly important, but we also need people to join who are the right fit for the service, and we need to be the right fit for them as well. So it's extremely important when we're assessing applicants for DUS that we are confident they understand the commitment they're making, because it is a huge commitment. That sponsorship carries with it a return of service obligation, and we need to be certain that the people we bring into the service under that sponsorship program can meet the return of service.
So you find that with Army. Army is probably the one that offers the most opportunities through that one there. There's 12 positions a year.
Sure.
Which means that, you know, that's 12 across Australia. So it is still very highly competitive, and we're not just looking at people's clinical ability, it's also their officer qualities as well.
Absolutely. Now, Michaela has asked, and I suppose we can talk to this because both yourself, Christine, and Marcus started in general entry job roles. I'm just wondering about medic jobs and what's required to become one.
So with a medic, you don't have to have any previous qualifications. You have to have completed at least year 10, and maths and English passes. For the Navy, you also need to have passed year 11 biology. We do encourage applicants to complete their year 12 though. Medic is incredibly competitive, and there is a long waiting list at the moment. So if you're keen to do that job, I recommend applying as soon as possible or as early as possible. The thing to be aware of is that we provide all the training in service. So our medics come through, they do their individual service initial entry training at either Kapooka, Wagga Wagga for Air Force, and at Cerberus for Navy, and then they all go to the School of Army Health at Albury-Wodonga, and they do 18 months of training, come out with a diploma in enrolled nursing and paramedical science.
Wonderful. Now, Matt asked, what are the overseas opportunities for nurses in the ADF?
So that's a bit of a trick question in some sort of ways. Is that if we're talking about opportunities for deployments and operational roles, well, the ADF is engaged in numerous operations at the moment, and many of them have nurses which are actually part of it. As far as overseas postings, that's quite limited. But from operational roles, there are roles currently going through Afghanistan and Iraq, which are having regular rotations.
Within the Navy, we have 3 billets that are based on our ships, and those nurses are members of the ship's company, and whenever the ships sail, the nurses go with them. So if the ship visits ports on their trips, then the nurses obviously get to visit those ports. But again, in terms of postings overseas, there are limits. We do have 1 or 2 that are actually training postings. One in particular I can think of that is based in America, and it's advanced emergency and trauma nursing training with the US Navy, I believe.
Yeah, wonderful. Christy has asked, what are the biggest differences in day-to-day professional experience for health professionals between the Army, Navy and Air Force? So how do your job roles differ within service?
I think you find that we both have similar roles in a way, is that really what we're here to do is to provide a deployable capability. And that is always our primary focus. So that is not just the delivering of a health service overseas, it's also making sure everyone's ready. And so what we have is that there is a health service which is based out of each of the base locations, and we all sort of work within those locations in order to ensure people are ready. We do our training within our own groups as well. So in many ways we're actually quite similar. What really changes is just the environment. That I do mine in a greenfield environment out in the bush. Yours is done on a ship. But there are many opportunities in which we actually do it in the same place. So if we talk about like the 2nd General Health Battalion, quite often when I go and we establish that out in a greenfield environment, when I look around, I see all uniforms. So it's not just an Army hospital, it really is an ADF hospital.
So what was training like for each of you?
I enjoyed my training. It, I guess, was a very different experience from as a psychologist in an office, where I got to meet a lot of other different allied health professionals on my course. So training alongside physios, doctors, nurses, dentists, and the like. You know, we got an opportunity to go outfield as well as part of that training, learned a lot about military history, you know, leadership skills and those sorts of things. Learning how to use a weapon as well was required. So I met lots of really lovely people and networking on those courses, and you know, through my career I've had opportunities where I've come across and worked with some of them and come across them again in other courses as well, so it's really nice.
So I find for myself that like nursing for me is a second career within Defence, and it really has been a journey that it has gone along, and I'm a relatively senior nurse as it is at the moment. So I started from having the opportunity to use the undergraduate program to go through and doing my base level qualification, gaining experience in a civilian setting, which is really about gaining clinical competence. Then bringing that back into Defence. Now, initially you go through a series of 3 training courses. One of them is a specialist officer course, which is really about indoctrinating you into Army, teaching you how to be an officer, and introducing you to some of the leadership principles. And then you're moving on to courses which is about learning about logistics within Defence, and then finishing up with what are the extended practice nursing skills. That's a course which is done over 2 phases, taught out of the Army School of Health. I've also been lucky enough that to specialise. So we have additional opportunities which are available to us through long-term schooling serials, where I've actually been seconded out and gone out to Royal Brisbane Hospital for 12 months and then studied through Queensland University of Technology to become an intensive care nurse.
Amazing.
From a Navy perspective, so all naval officers that join full-time do the same course. It's a 22-week course at HMAS Creswell at the Royal College, Naval College down there. The reason all of us do the same course is because when we're posted to sea, we're all naval officers. And that means that we have to be able to function as a fully qualified naval officer, irrespective of what specialty or job profession we have. On that course, we do things like survival at sea, we do damage control exercises, so fighting fires, pretending we're in a flooded ship and getting very drenched. We also do weapon handling and a number of exercises out in the bush. I was fairly fortunate, having already been a sailor. Much of the course I was familiar with. So for me, my officer training was very much about learning how to be a mentor for the junior members of my class and supporting them through their experience, as well as learning to be an officer myself.
And I suppose a shared experience within all 3 services. I mean, you're all in very specified health roles where you normally wouldn't engage in the kind of military training that you had to go through and continue to go through in the services, and when you serve on a daily basis as well, that perhaps people might not realise or think that would be a part of that job role for them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely a thing for me, is that my job is so much more than being a nurse and an intensive care nurse. I'm a capability manager, I'm a personnel manager. It is a much more diverse role than being just being as a nurse. The skill sets required are much larger than that.
And it's the same for a psychologist as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Harrison has asked, what surprised you most about serving within Defence?
Where to start?
I think for me is that I started as an 18-year-old. I'm 41 now, And there's been a few points in my career where I thought, you know, I want to go do something else, but I still love it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm here 23 years later and I still love it. And I'm always learning. I enjoy my job, and you know, it's just it's good to do it, and I want to continue doing it.
I probably have to say the same. I think this is the longest time I've ever spent in one job.
Yeah.
A job, I suppose, previous to the military kept my attention for maybe 2 years. But I've been here for 14 years and I'm still loving it. So, and I guess, again, just the variety of jobs that we do and all constantly learning as well. Yeah.
For me, so when I went back to university, I was completely out of the services for 7 years, and I missed it dreadfully. The sense of camaraderie, the sense of shared purpose, and I found I couldn't get back in quick enough, really, in the end. And like every job, it has its ups and downs, but the good days far outweigh the bad, and the opportunities are amazing. And the reality is, if you have a job that you struggle with, in 2 or 3 years you can post out of that job into something new. So there's lots of different opportunities and experiences, both not just as a nurse, but broadening that to being a manager, as Mark has said, and learning about logistics, all those sorts of additional responsibilities that you may not necessarily get to do as a clinical nurse.
They really are such holistic job roles in the end, aren't they?
Yeah, the variety is just it's so broad.
Yeah.
The things that you can do, you know, all the way from being a clinical nurse at a bedside to last year I was doing industrial relations.
There you go. Now, our panel today has been put together to talk about some of our hot jobs at the moment. Now, we don't have an Air Force representative on the panel today because, unfortunately, a lot of the Air Force roles are not recruiting at the moment, but we got to spend some time with Alex, a nurse in the Air Force, to hear about her experiences in her job role as a nurse. So let's have a look at that now. I'm here with Alex. Alex, can you tell us where we are?
So today we are at Enoggera Health Centre, which is a Joint Health Command facility at Gallipoli Barracks.
Can you tell me a little bit about your job role as an Air Force nursing officer and what some of your daily duties involve?
Sure, so my job as a nursing officer in the Royal Australian Air Force is I'm a registered nurse, and basically my job consists of 3 components. So air medical evacuation, so repatriating a injured or unwell Australian Defence Force member from somewhere that they are currently to where they need to be here in Australia to receive the care they need. Expeditionary health, so basically a field hospital, so working either in a hard stand facility or in a tent somewhere in Australia or overseas. And thirdly, garrison health, so right here where we are now, working in this kind of facility to provide primary health care to ADF members on a daily basis.
And so is this what your everyday environment looks like?
Yeah, so pretty much my daily work environment looks something like this, depending on where we are in Australia or overseas, maybe tailored. Air Force's capability is what we call light and lean, so we have specialised equipment to take away with us overseas to make our facilities as quick and movable as possible.
And so do you enjoy being able to sort of just pick up your work environment and move wherever you need to go?
Yeah, so I think that's probably the most exciting part of my job. So I really enjoy the variety that being in the RAF gives me. So I'm able to do a different job each day, and each posting is different to the last. A lot of great environments to work in, people to work with, and different environments around Australia and overseas.
So tell me about some of the places you've been able to visit with the ADF.
So my favourite place that I've been in my RAF career is definitely to Samoa. I went with the New Zealand Army in 2012 for about a month. I went to an island off the coast of Samoa with an Australian Navy doctor, where we delivered really important life-saving and primary health care to the locals there, which was really well received.
Fantastic. Thanks, Alex. So please make sure you're getting your questions through. Thank you for sending them through so far. We are getting through them. We'll jump straight back in. Now, Michael has asked a question about fitness. Now, if I wanted to apply for the Navy as an entry-level medic and I'm still working on my fitness, should I apply soon so it's competitive, or keep working towards my fitness and apply later on?
So my advice would be apply now. So once you're in our pipeline of candidates, you can take your time. There's once you've completed the aptitude test, it lasts for 3 years. Sorry, so. Definitely, I would recommend applying sooner rather than later. And in terms of passing the fitness assessment, we give you the opportunity to practice it once you're in the pipeline, which is awesome. So you get to practice with Defence Recruiting. Of course, there is the ADF app, which is ADF Active app, which is really, really beneficial for trying to get your fitness levels up. But in the meantime, you're clicking through that time, waiting for vacancies to open up.
Even if you are waiting to put through an application, it would always be best to start working on your fitness as soon as possible, right?
Yeah, and that app is available to anybody who wants to download it. You don't have to be an applicant.
Absolutely.
And as healthcare workers, we'd probably encourage everyone to work on their fitness, even if they aren't joining the defence.
Absolutely. It reduces, I guess, injuries as well. And fitness becomes, I guess, part of your lifestyle within the military, where we do have time during the day in your shifts to try and work on your fitness. So I guess the standard that you're aiming for, or what is tested, is really the basic level. So trying to get above that would be an ideal.
I guess we can talk to lifestyle here as well. How have you been able to maintain your fitness since enlisting and spending your years in defence?
I like to exercise most mornings for myself, and there are great facilities on base in the Army where the gym is fantastic. You've got, cardio, boxing, weights room, you've got a swimming pool as well. So I like to do a number of different things of those, and I also like to do cycling as well.
Yeah, so one of the conditions of service we have is actually about maintaining our fitness and having fitness standards. So what we do is we actually have a training program. Within that program, we have 3 set periods a week in which we actually conduct physical training, and quite often guided by physical training instructors. That's done within work time. And of course, if you are keen, you can do additional things in your own time, and there's a lot of facilities available on base in order to help you out with that.
So obviously, with the Navy, it's sometimes a little bit harder for us to do physical training when we're at sea. Most of our ships have some form of exercise equipment on board, but it can be quite hard to get onto it. And of course, there's always the benefits of trying to run around on a moving platform to challenge you. We have the standards in service are slightly different to the fitness assessment standard to join, and the reason behind that is to minimise the risk of injury during initial training, which can be quite arduous. So that's why we have such a high entry standard. And then, as was said before, our in-service fitness standards is not quite as high a standard for maintenance. Of course, you can always challenge yourself and push. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, you have these opportunities to exercise and maintain your fitness. What kind of hours do you typically work?
Usually 7:30 to 4 p.m. is the usual hours.
Okay.
Yep. But when you go on exercise or deployment, those hours might change, and the days of the week that you might work as well. So generally tend to be a bit longer as well, depending on what the work demand is.
So as a psychologist, you're looking at a typical day job.
Yep.
And you're getting paid to work out in between.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty good to
great.
me.
Yeah.
How about you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, as a nurse, what we really do is, while we're working on base, we're working Monday to Friday. We're either preparing to get ready to deploy somewhere or to go on exercises, or we're supporting with the garrison health support. We tend to exercise mainly during those periods, as I said, those 3 periods, and those are our standard sort of working days. If we go on operations, well, that becomes a slightly different thing. Like, as a nurse, you would be expected to be able to do sort of 12-hour shifts on a rotating basis, working sort of 6-7 days a week for the duration of those exercises or operations.
Perfect.
So again, with the Navy, our business as usual is being at sea. So when we're at sea, the way we work is usually it's one of two ways. We're either a day hand or we might be a watchkeeper, which is shift work. So depending on which group we sit in, obviously shift work, it's self-explanatory, you do rotating shifts, and that might be at night, it might be during the day. Our day hands, we do shifts from 7:30 till 4 during the day, and then we stand down. But when you're at sea, you're always on duty to some extent. So if there's an emergency, everybody responds to it. When you're ashore, depending on the role that you're in, it's usually basically a day job. And we do have to do duties, additional duties as well, but normally it's from day to day, it's a normal day shift.
So Corey has asked, what other kind of benefits does the Army offer?
Yeah, so if we're talking about benefits, what you probably he might be going on about is if we're talking about is in lifestyle fitness.
Yeah,
that's one that we've discussed already. We talk about remuneration. So our pay scales are quite competitive with from what is our salary. Our pay scale is quite competitive, but we have additional things like housing, health, or subsidised rent, subsidised housing as well. And our superannuation packages are quite good as well.
So with health, that includes your dental and your medical costs.
Which is huge.
Yeah.
Casey has asked, would the Army sponsor a Master of Nursing?
So there are long-term schooling serials in Masters of Nursing. The avenue to get to them though is it wouldn't be your direct entry. You're not coming in to come and do one of those serials. You would have to come into defence, serve in defence for a short period of time. Now, if you come in as a direct entry and you already have postgraduate skills, then that time period in which you would need to wait in order to be able to try and pick up a long-term schooling serial to do a master's would be shorter. Otherwise, you would be looking at usually in the order of maybe 8 to 9 years of full-time service as you've progressed through the ranks to be ready to go and do a master's serial.
Can I just add to that?
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure if Corey was specifically talking about a specialist master's or whether he was talking about graduate entry masters in nursing to become a registered nurse. We do sponsor, under the Defence University Sponsorship Program, we do sponsor a master's in nursing as a graduate entry avenue.
Fantastic. Now, how do you and your family find being in defence? Let's talk about some lifestyle balance. Danielle, you have a family?
Yes, I have 4 children and a husband, of course. I guess they become part of the lifestyle because they're moving around the country with me. I have a very supportive husband where he's able to be at home and take the kids to school and do all those sorts of things that allows me then to go away at short notice or go away on courses for a period of time and that sort of thing. So it's definitely a necessary part, I guess, to have that support network when you've got a family as a military member.
Yeah, so I'm married. I have 2 children. I have a boy and a girl, an 8 and a 6-year-old. They keep me incredibly busy. As far as, I've been military for a long time, so I've gone all the way through from the spectrum of having no children and being fancy and free, to the point of being married and no children, and then now having 2 children. And there has been difficult times when it comes to moving around and changing jobs and changing schools. But what I've really found is that if you have the support of your family, they become part of the defence community. And it really enriches the experience of being in the military and having the opportunities to be able to take a family and go and live in different parts of Australia. Last year I got to be able to take my son skiing for a whole season, and that's an opportunity that I would never have got.
Or he.
And so it has been, it comes with its challenges, but I think that if you perceive it in the right way and you have the support of your family, it can be really good.
Fantastic. Now, Remneet asked, what are the job opportunities as a registered nurse in the Army and Air Force?
So, in the Army, as we had spoken about before, there's two methods of entry to come in there's either as the direct entry or as an undergrad. Now, I believe that the numbers are 12 undergrads that we're aiming for next year and 7 direct entries. So in total, that's 19 positions available next year for people to come in and join the Defence Force.
Fantastic. Now, Christine, you are a Navy nurse. Now, we actually got to spend some time with you in your work environment at the Enoggera Health Centre, talking about your job role in a little bit more detail in your work environment. So let's have a look at that. I'm at the Enoggera Health Centre with Christine. Christine, can you tell me a little bit about the job role of Navy nurse and some of the duties involved?
Certainly. So we have both full-time and reserve nurses in the Navy. The primary roles of nurses vary according to which pathway they came in, but for full-time nurses, generally their first posting will be with the Maritime Operational Health Unit, which is based at HMAS Penguin in Sydney. That role, they spend a combination of time doing clinical placements in the local civilian hospitals, admin when they're ashore, so Navy admin, and also deployments onto our big new ships, HMAS Adelaide and Canberra, and sometimes onto HMAS Choules as well. So when they're doing those deployments, they will be doing clinical work, running scenarios that we have patients being medevaced onto the ships and running them through the health facility into emergency, being assessed. For other postings beyond the Maritime Operational Health Unit, many of those are health admin and management roles, but we still do clinical placements as part of those postings.
And so tell me, which avenue of entry did you select?
So my pathway has been slightly convoluted. I originally started as an Army Reserve medic, so part-time while I was at university. I then dropped out of uni and actually joined the Navy full-time as a medic, and I did 4 years. Then I discharged from the Navy, went back to university, finished my nursing training and qualified as a perioperative emergency and trauma nurse. And then I came back to the service in 2004 as a fully qualified graduate nursing officer. So yeah, a little bit, a few twists and turns there.
And so tell me about some of the differences between working as a Navy nurse ashore and at sea.
Okay, with being at sea, there's 2 possible ways that a nurse can be at sea. One is being posted to a ship, so part of the crew, and the other is being deployed to the ship. Being posted to the ship, you're a member of the ship's company, you're responsible for the healthcare of the crew. That includes supporting the medics with hands-on clinical care for inpatients. It also involves a number of ancillary duties that are required of all naval officers at sea, such as being an officer of the day. If you're deployed to the ship, you generally belong to the Maritime Operational Health Unit, which is normally the first posting that most nurses have. And you go to the ship for a period of time, usually associated with an exercise, such as exercise RIMPAC, which is a Rim of the Pacific exercise, multinational, based out of Hawaii. We normally send one of our LHDs on that exercise, and we usually put a health contingent on there, which will include nurses. The other side is when we're ashore. Again, the Maritime Operational Health Unit, that is our deployable health capability, so the personnel posted there are required to maintain their clinical currency through placements, usually in civilian hospitals, and they also do have days where they need to do admin and so on and so forth. Beyond the Maritime Operational Health Unit, a lot of our postings are health admin and management roles with some clinical placement to help maintain currency.
Fantastic. Thanks, Christine.
Pleasure.
We are here for a little while longer, so please make sure you're getting your final questions through. Now we'll jump straight back into them so that we can answer as many as we can. Now, is the recruiting process the same as for other roles? So I presume general entry job roles.
So the recruiting process is fundamentally the same for every applicant. The only distinction is if you're going for an officer role, you're required to do an officer selection board.
Fantastic. Now, Sareed asks, can a permanent resident apply for the Australian Army? Now, I guess that applies for all three services. If you are a permanent resident with a view to obtaining your citizenship, you may begin your application to attend a U session. Keep in mind that you will need to have gained your Australian citizenship by the time you enlist or appoint. So, permanent resident, yes, but you will need to be a citizen by the time that you enlist or appoint. Now, what are the commitments for reserves? Let's talk about reserves.
The baseline requirement for our reserves in terms of time commitment is 20 days a year. The three services require that in a different format. So for the Army, it's very regulated. They parade every Tuesday night for 3 hours. They usually parade one weekend a month, and there's usually a 2-week exercise somewhere during that year, and that covers off on most of their 20 days. The other two services are a little bit more flexible in how those 20 days are delivered, and it depends on their postings. So with the Air Force, they have an active unit that the specialists are posted to, and they can format their 20 days through that unit. The Navy has a different style again, and we have an annual exercise every year that our specialist reserve health personnel can attend. And we also provide opportunities to deploy onto our ships, our bigger ships, the LHDs, Adelaide and Canberra, for various exercises during that time as well.
I think that from Army's perspective here is that it can never be understated how much we rely on our reserve workforce to provide our capabilities.
Well, that's all three services, really.
Yeah, so our specialist nurses are extremely important to us. Our specialist doctors, these are people which we are really asking to have the highest level of clinical capability, and they spend their lives dedicated to achieving that capability. Now, the commitment to join military full-time can be a little bit too much, a bit too scary for some, but coming in as a reservist, offering those 20 days, offering the support to exercises, providing those skills and experience that they bring are so valuable in generating the capability that Army is able to generate.
And that 20 days is a minimum. We have a number of reservists across all three services that give far more time than that, including rotations through our operational units, operations such as Pacific Partnership, which is a humanitarian opportunity that all three services can be involved in, and activities such as major exercises here in Australia or overseas as well.
And that's the same for psychology as well. Yeah. We really utilise our reservists, and where they will conduct a yearly exercise with us as well in training, and they also have opportunities to do different types of tasks depending on what their availability is.
So this includes operational roles as well. So they have an avenue that when they are available to provide support, they can come on a short period of service. So they'll engage for maybe 6 months or 3 months, and they will go and provide that capability on operational role as well.
Wonderful. Now, Chris asked, he's a new graduate mental health nurse, currently working in an acute mental health ward. I'm currently doing my Masters of Mental Health Nursing. How competitive is the application for mental health nurse?
We actually have quite limited opportunities for mental health nursing, and the reason for that is we actually rely very heavily on our psychologists to support the mental health and well-being of our soldiers.
Yeah, so as a psychologist, we'll provide a mental health assessments and treatment plans, also working with doctors and psychiatrists within their care as a multidisciplinary team. We also do, selection organisational aspects where someone would like to change their job as well, and we'll do assessments in that area. We do mental health screening as well, so checking in, to see how people are tracking when people have been on deployment and when they've come back home and reintegrated back to their lifestyle and back at work.
Wonderful. Cindy Lee asked, my daughter is 14 and second year in Army Cadets and wants to pursue a nursing pathway. What is the best way for her to go about that?
It's easy, study hard and get into university.
Yep.
So obviously that would be, should be looking at applying for the Defence University Sponsorship Program.
Yep.
As we've already discussed, it is extremely competitive, so the better the grades, the better the chance. Being a cadet is great because it gives her an idea of what she will potentially be committing to. And she needs to get into university herself. And once she's been accepted, she can start the application process, do her U session while she's waiting to complete her first semester. And once she's got her first semester results, then she can move forward with her application.
Perfect, thank you. Now, Raya asks, as a psychology honours student, what options are available to me in terms of joining as a psychologist? Is there a master's graduate program?
That's a challenging one.
That is a challenging one, yes.
So the psychology career pathway is under review at the moment, and that affects us.
Okay.
So it's a very hard question to...
There is. So there has been a 4+2, so where you've done your honours year, and then you can come in as a direct entry and then do your internship under supervision to then gain your registration as a psychologist. Then there's a potential 5+1 where you've gone and started your masters, and then you'll come in after your first year's completed and complete the last year under supervision to then become registered as a psychologist.
Sure. And I guess it is important to note that all of this info is available on the Defence Jobs website. So if you jump into the specific job pages on the website, you will be able to see exactly what kind of return of service obligation you're looking at and what kind of time period you're looking at exactly. So I have a question here from Kath, and what is the pay like? It's a very important question.
I came in as an intern,
Sure.
So I guess for me, where I was under training, I think the pay was quite competitive in comparison to what you would get as a student trying to complete a master's.
Exactly.
Yeah, so you know, the pay is quite good, and the benefits that come along with that. So it's not just your pay; it's the whole package.
It's everything, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think it's quite important to think about. It's not just the salary that you receive; it's the benefits in terms of your medical and dental care. It's the support and housing that you get. There's opportunities available to get subsidised loans, and also what's available in that salary packaging and your superannuation. So really, it's that whole package. But I mean, looking at it just from the point of your salary, it's well and truly comparable with what you would be receiving on the outside world. For instance, in myself, I am a senior registered nurse, and I earn the same as what I would do if I was out there working shift work. Yet I'm working Monday to Friday.
Sure.
What he said.
Yep, spot on, good answer. Now, last but not least, we caught up with you, Danielle, in your job environment to have a chat about what it's like being a psychologist in the Army. So let's have a talk about the different work environments within her role. I'm with Danielle at Enoggera Health Centre. Danielle, can you tell me a little bit about your job role as an Army psychologist and what your job role involves?
Sure. So working in the office environment in Garrison, we provide, I guess, clinical work where we provide acute care and support in regards to mental health issues. But we also do, I guess, a selection organisational focus as well, where people come along where they want to change their roles. So whereas they need to go into a specialist area where they'll need a psychological assessment to assess suitability.
And tell me about some of the situations and environments that you've worked in.
Sure. So in Garrison, obviously we're in an office. We also go on exercise, so out in the field where we'll work in an air-conditioned, specially made tent, which is really cool. We also deploy as well, and that's working in an office as well.
And so what kind of skills have you picked up in this job role that you wouldn't have in a civilian counterpart?
Sure, many skills, I guess, though we can specialise. So for example, in Special Forces, intelligence or aviation. So for my background, I've had aviation experience. where I was sponsored to go over to the UK, where the military paid for me to go to university over there and complete an aviation accident investigation course. So that allows me to be a human factors expert on aviation incidences such as near miss or an accident.
That's definitely not something you'd pick up in the civilian world.
No. So yeah, lots of different opportunities.
Thanks so much, Danielle. Thank you so much for sticking with us this afternoon and getting your questions through to us. Now we are at the tail end of this Q&A, so we will jump back into our final questions. We'll talk about experiences. What keeps you guys engaged in your job roles?
I guess for me, there's three main things.
Yeah.
First is the camaraderie, so that peer support that you have. Next is professional development in your role, where you're constantly learning. And third is just feeling like you're making a difference and that you're helping people.
It's very important.
Yeah.
I find lifestyle, as we've discussed, those things about health, pay, and so the things which partly keep me engaged. But I think that really, on a deeper level for me, the fact that I've got to a point where I feel like I can make a difference to providing capabilities that will save someone's life.
Yeah.
The people that are willing to protect this country by putting their lives at risk, then I now have the ability to do something to help save their life. And for me, that's a really big thing, knowing that I can do that.
What he said. In addition, so obviously from a Navy perspective, one of the things that I've enjoyed most about my career is when you're posted to sea, you're a part of a huge team of multidisciplinary personnel, and I'm not talking within health, I'm talking communicators, I'm talking the people that drive the ships, the cooks, the stewards, the storebies, all of those different people, our engineers that keep our ships running, and we all have a purpose. So we're one team working towards a directive given to us by somebody a lot higher than us, and that sense of purpose, you know, day after day cruising around in the ocean, which sounds nice but can get a little bit monotonous sometimes. It doesn't really, because you're all working together and we have a common goal. So when I'm not at sea, the same sort of thing, knowing that what I'm doing is working towards providing the best possible health care to the people that defend this country and my freedom.
What is the travel like? Tell me about some of the places you've been.
I've had the opportunity to go to the UK and study, as you heard earlier. Yeah. Also, I've had a deployment to France as well, so that was pretty cool. But not only overseas, but also just travelling around Australia with the different postings that I've had has been really good.
Well, for me, the experiences I've had, I mean, 23 years, 2 careers, supported by Defence pretty much the whole way through this. You know, I've got to abseil out of helicopters. I have climbed the Three Sisters. I have swum on the Jesus Beach over in East Timor. I've seen the Tigris River. You know, hanging out the back of Chinook helicopters. I mean, what other nurse can say they've done something like that?
Yeah, tell me about it.
In terms of my career, obviously with the Navy, we do get to travel a fair bit.
Yeah.
I actually have lost track of how many countries I've visited, but I've been as far north as Guam, near Japan, as far as west as Samoa, and as far east as, well, a ways east anyway. So, sorry, back to front, west, east.
Yeah.
So I've seen quite a lot of countries. Obviously with Navy visits, they tend to be shorter, but it's you get the opportunity to experience the cultures in those countries. I've done some really quirky jobs as part of my ancillary duties when posted to sea. One of my postings, I was required to qualify as a helicopter control officer. Pretty weird for a nurse, but nevertheless, so think air traffic control on a ship. And an example of one of the more challenging components, and in hindsight funny, not at the time, but in hindsight funny, we had a crew member that was sick and needed to be medevaced. The only available helicopter nearby was Russian, a civilian Russian helicopter, and we had to somehow get that helicopter onto our landing deck. they didn't speak English, we didn't speak Russian, so there was a lot of arm waving and pointing, but we got the job done and we got our crew member off, and they were fine in the end. So very unusual thing for a nurse to have done, but nevertheless, that was part of one of my sea postings. Yeah, there can be some really weird things and fun things that we do.
Wonderful. Now, very last question. I know we've talked about some really good things, but what would be your career highlight to date?
I think working in aviation and having the opportunity to fly in some of our wonderful aircraft and working along with those guys has been really pretty cool.
Yeah, fantastic.
I think that, like as you can see behind you, this is an ICU capability. I know that myself and a couple of other ICU nurses had the opportunity to take this actually over to Iraq. We were able to use that clinical capability, and we were able to use that capability to save a man's life, save his leg, and to have had that opportunity to do that, it really was a highlight.
For me, I think my sea service is actually the highlight, and with 5.5 years of sea service, it's hard to pick a specific.
But highlight, that's good.
It is. But I guess probably the highlight was I was very fortunate to be the first nursing officer on HMAS Adelaide, one of our new landing ships. We have a big health capability on board those ships, and I was fortunate enough to be involved in bringing that ship into service. And also working towards getting the health capability on that ship working and functional with a huge medical team and logistics team on board that ship.
This sounds like some really, really great stories and highlights. Good careers. Well, that is all that we have time for today. Thank you so much for your questions, everyone. Thank you for answering them for us today. Now, remember, you can jump onto the Defence Jobs website to apply online, or if you'd like to find out a bit more information, you can also email srt-h@dfr.com.au with any questions. That is our health inbox. So if you have any questions that we haven't answered today, we will get back to you over the next few days. But thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.